The jungle at night is a world of shifting shadows and hidden lives. As the full moon rises above the Amazon canopy, its light breaks through in fractured shafts, painting silver pathways across the forest floor and glittering in broken mosaics on the surface of the river. This illumination, rare and complete, changes the rules of survival here. Normally, the moonlight makes prey animals more cautious, their movements restrained by the increased risk of detection. Yet, under this same silver glow, the most powerful predator of the forest, the jaguar, seems to shed its usual constraints. Something in its behavior shifts. Its silence is intact, its stealth undiminished, but the cadence of its movement carries an urgency, as though responding to a rhythm inaudible to human ears. Jaguars are solitary by nature, patrolling vast territories that can stretch across hundreds of square kilometers. Each individual lives a largely secretive life, marking boundaries with scent and rarely tolerating others except for fleeting encounters during mating. They are ambush predators, relying not on prolonged chases like cheetahs or pack coordination like wolves, but on explosive precision. With forelimbs built for power rather than speed, and a jaw structure unmatched in strength by any other big cat relative to body size, the jaguar's survival depends on patience and a single decisive strike. Normally, its domain is one of silence and concealment, where every step is calculated to preserve energy and avoid unnecessary conflict. Yet when the moon is full, jaguars exhibit patterns that defy this solitary blueprint. Indigenous communities along the Rio Negro speak of the Yauti, the moon-eyed one, whose gaze shines brighter and whose call grows louder when the jungle is bathed in silver light. Hunters tell of hearing jaguars vocalize repeatedly during these nights, their guttural roars carrying not just through their territories, but overlapping with the domains of rivals. In ordinary conditions, such calls would risk drawing competition, even violent clashes. But during what locals call the Silver Surge, these sounds appear not as warnings but as signals, punctuated and patterned, almost rhythmic, as if designed to coordinate rather than repel. The biology of the jaguar offers hints of why such a transformation might be possible. Unlike lions or leopards, jaguars rely heavily on vision adapted for twilight and darkness. Their retinas contain a dense layer of cells optimized for low-light hunting, and behind them lies the tapetum lucidum, a reflective structure that amplifies available light by bouncing it back across the retina. Under the full moon, this system reaches extraordinary sensitivity, allowing them to detect the faintest ripple of water or the twitch of a rodent beneath leaf litter. To human observers, the eyes seem to glow unnaturally bright, casting an eerie reflection when caught in the beam of a flashlight. To the jaguar, however, this is not magic, but an evolutionary advantage, a sudden expansion of sensory power that might well fuel heightened confidence and activity. But perception alone does not explain the coordination witnessed by those who have watched jaguars abandon their solitude under the full moon. In recent decades, scattered reports from biologists and local trackers alike describe jaguars moving along riverbanks in loose proximity, each spaced far enough to avoid conflict, yet close enough that their roars and movements appear connected. One hypothesis suggests that the moonlight expands their hunting window, enabling them to target prey species that are otherwise too vigilant in pitch-dark conditions. Capybaras, caiman, and peccaries, all staple prey, alter their own routines under brighter nights, shifting feeding grounds or clustering more tightly. To exploit such changes, predators may benefit from an unspoken truce or even a shared protocol of movement. It is here that the theory of the full moon protocol begins to take shape. If jaguars are not simply responding to better visibility but to a deeper environmental signal, then perhaps their behavior is not merely opportunistic. It may be systemic. The idea that multiple apex predators could synchronize without direct communication is unusual in ecology. Yet parallels exist. In the oceans, schools of fish shift direction in unison, guided by tiny cues in water pressure and the movements of neighbors. On land, wildebeest herds migrate in vast waves, not by individual decision-making, but by emergent coordination shaped by rainfall and vegetation cycles. Jaguars, though solitary, may be susceptible to similar triggers, perhaps rooted in sensory adaptations tuned not only to prey, but to subtle lunar or electromagnetic frequencies. When viewed through this lens, the jaguar's restlessness under moonlight begins to resemble more than simple agitation. Its pacing along the riverbank, its repeated pauses to listen, its vocalizations timed at intervals, all hint at a role larger than its solitary instincts. In the framework of the silver surge, the jaguar could act as a commander species, its signals resonating outward to other predators who share this environment. While it seems implausible for a jaguar to consciously direct snakes, fish, or insects, it is not inconceivable that the behavior of one dominant predator could set off cascading effects. The sound of a jaguar's roar may flush prey into rivers where piranhas await. Its scent marking may stir rodents from burrows, driving them into the path of spiders or snakes. Even its presence may push herds of capybaras into tighter groups, making them easier targets for multiple hunters simultaneously. The ecological role of jaguars already demonstrates this web of influence. Studies have shown that in areas where jaguars are absent, prey populations swell unnaturally, leading to overgrazing and a decline in plant diversity. By regulating prey density and behavior, jaguars indirectly shape the entire ecosystem, a phenomenon ecologists call a trophic cascade. Under the silver surge, this natural influence may be magnified, not simply by one predator acting alone, but by a network of responses triggered in parallel. If the jaguar's restlessness is indeed the ignition point, then its role extends beyond solitary hunter to keystone conductor in a symphony of predation. Consider the physiological implications of this transformation. Large predators like jaguars typically conserve energy whenever possible, since hunting is costly and success rates are low. To abandon this conservation strategy, pacing, vocalizing, moving across larger areas, suggests that some external force justifies the expenditure. The moon's gravitational pull affects tides thousands of kilometers inland, subtly influencing groundwater levels, soil moisture, and even the activity of insects and amphibians. Many nocturnal species have reproductive cycles synchronized with lunar phases, from corals in the ocean to frogs in rainforest pools. It is plausible that jaguars too are wired to respond, not to the moonlight alone, but to a cascade of ecological signals tied to lunar cycles, prey animals shifting locations, snakes becoming more active, or rivers pulsing with altered flow. The jaguar may sense these patterns as opportunities, instinctively stepping into a rhythm that aligns with the behavior of the jungle at large. And yet the coordination remains unsettling. The image of multiple jaguars tolerating one another's presence, of predators aligning rather than competing, feels almost unnatural. Evolution teaches us that solitary hunters are driven by territorial aggression. Cooperation rarely benefits them. Why then would these apex predators abandon rivalry under the full moon? Some scientists suggest it could be a temporary truce born of abundance. If prey are easier to catch, competition diminishes. Others entertain more radical possibilities, that a shared ancestral instinct, buried deep in their evolutionary memory, awakens only under lunar conditions, a relic of a time when coordination offered survival advantages we no longer understand. As the camera lingers on a jaguar moving through silver light, its body rippling with muscle, its whiskers twitching as it tastes the air, the question persists. It pauses by the river, tilts its head, and releases a roar that cuts through the night. The sound echoes, deep and resonant, then is answered, faintly but unmistakably, from somewhere upriver. For a moment, the illusion of solitude shatters. We are not watching one jaguar, but many, moving like nodes in a hidden system. The silver surge has begun, and the jaguar, silent stalker of the forest, may be more than just a predator tonight. It may be the conductor of the jungle's most ancient and dangerous symphony. The floor of the Amazon rainforest is a labyrinth of fallen leaves, decomposing wood, and shadows that never fully retreat even under the brightest daylight. By night, especially beneath the flood of a full moon, this ground layer transforms into an unpredictable arena of concealment. Here, camouflaged against the mottled patterns of soil and leaf litter, lies one of the jungle's most elusive predators, the bushmaster snake. Unlike the jaguar, whose presence commands open respect, the bushmaster thrives by remaining unseen, striking not through spectacle, but through precision and chemistry. It is not just one of the longest venomous snakes in the Americas, reaching lengths of over 3 meters, but one of the least encountered, a phantom of the undergrowth, whose very survival depends on patience and invisibility. The bushmaster is an ambush predator, designed by evolution to minimize energy expenditure while maximizing lethality. Its cryptic patterning mirrors the broken textures of its environment. Russet browns, pale greys, and earth-toned diamonds melt into the forest floor, rendering its body nearly indistinguishable from detritus. Unlike vipers that actively pursue prey, the bushmaster relies on stillness, coiling itself near well-worn trails used by rodents, marsupials, or ground-dwelling birds. Hours, sometimes days, can pass before it strikes. When the opportunity arrives, it does not hesitate. With hinged fangs capable of delivering one of the most voluminous venom loads of any snake, it injects a cocktail of neurotoxic and hemotoxic compounds that paralyze muscles, disrupt nervous communication, and unravel tissue integrity. A small mammal caught in its bite has seconds, perhaps a minute at most, before its body succumbs to failure. Under ordinary circumstances, this predator is solitary to an extreme. Even during the breeding season, encounters are rare, and bushmasters rely on chemical cues rather than physical interaction to find mates. For decades, herpetologists considered the species almost mythical, difficult to study because of its nocturnal habits, low population density, and vast home ranges. To witness one in the wild is to be reminded how much of the Amazon remains hidden, existing just beyond their reach of human senses. And yet, during the nights of a full moon, observers have reported scenes that challenge the very foundation of what we know about these reclusive snakes. Instead of isolation, there is movement in parallel. Instead of ambush from silence, there is rhythm. Multiple bushmasters, aligned as though guided by an invisible hand, glide through the undergrowth on converging trajectories. Their motion is not hurried, it is deliberate, smooth, almost ceremonial. To see 2, 3, or even 4 of these notoriously solitary serpents moving within visual distance of one another is not just unusual, it is ecologically unprecedented. The most haunting accounts describe synchronized strikes, Two bushmasters, positioned meters apart, lunging at the same prey animal with uncanny simultaneity. Whether this is coincidence, the result of both detecting the same vibrations at the same instant, or evidence of some deeper coordination, remains an open question. But under the frame of the silver surge, these moments become part of a larger pattern, a suggestion that the snakes are not acting as individuals, but as nodes within a wider hunting grid. Understanding how such behavior could occur requires delving into the sensory biology of snakes. Unlike mammals, bushmasters do not rely heavily on vision. Their eyes, though functional, are secondary to a far more specialized organ system, the infrared sensitive pits located between their nostrils and eyes. These structures allow them to detect minute variations in thermal radiation, essentially seeing the body heat of prey animals even in complete darkness. Combined with their exceptional sensitivity to ground-borne vibrations, bushmasters live in a perceptual world dominated not by images or sounds, but by tremors and heat signatures. To a snake, the rustle of a mouse in the leaves is not a sound, but a ripple traveling through the substrate, a seismic whisper that marks the boundary between hunger and opportunity. Here, the full moon may play an unexpected role. Lunar cycles influence not only light levels, but also animal activity across the food web. Rodents forage differently, frogs call with altered intensity, and even insects adjust their rhythms. These shifts, amplified by moonlight, may create vibration and thermal patterns more predictable and widespread than usual. If multiple bushmasters are tuned to these same cues, their independent responses could converge into what appears to be coordination. Yet the regularity of the movement, the sense of alignment, hints at something more than just chance. Some biologists speculate that electromagnetic fluctuations associated with lunar cycles could subtly affect reptilian sensory systems. Snakes, after all, are known to navigate using geomagnetic cues, and experimental evidence suggests that their orientation can be influenced by fields imperceptible to humans. Under a full moon, perhaps their perception synchronizes, aligning their bodies along invisible corridors of magnetic force. To the human observer crouched behind a camera lens, the effect is uncanny. The moonlight filtering through the canopy reveals thick bodies undulating in near unison, their scales catching silver glints with each contraction of muscle. They appear as if tracing lines on a hidden map, converging towards zones where prey animals are most abundant. One pauses, head slightly elevated, tongue flickering to sample chemical cues from the air. Another follows seconds later, mirroring the posture as if answering an unspoken call. It is tempting to anthropomorphize, to imagine conscious coordination, but what we are likely seeing is something deeper, a collective response to environmental information woven so tightly into their biology that it manifests as synchronicity. This possibility raises profound ecological implications. If bushmasters act as part of a system during the silver surge, they may not only increase their hunting efficiency, but also reshape the behavior of other species. Prey animals flushed by one snake may run directly into the strike zone of another, amplifying predation pressure beyond what a solitary hunter could achieve. In this sense, the bushmaster becomes not just a neurokiller of individual bodies, but a participant in a networked strategy that destabilizes prey populations on a larger scale. Over evolutionary time, such pressure could shape nocturnal foraging strategies, alter reproductive behaviors, and even drive certain species toward heightened vigilance during lunar phases. The ripple effects of such predatory synchronization may extend far beyond the snakes themselves, influencing the very architecture of the ecosystem. It is worth noting that venom itself is not static. The Bushmaster's toxic arsenal is a dynamic product of evolutionary arms races, fine-tuned to exploit vulnerabilities in the nervous systems of local prey. Its peptides interfere with synaptic transmission, halting communication between brain and muscle. For small mammals, this means immediate incapacitation. For larger animals, the result is slower, but equally inevitable. That such a weapon could be deployed in unison by multiple snakes striking in synchrony represents a level of ecological threat few environments could withstand for long. To a rodent colony or a nesting bird population, this would not be predation, it would be devastation. The rarity of these events keeps them shrouded in mystery. Scientific confirmation remains limited, often relying on anecdotal reports from locals or fleeting observations by field researchers. Yet the consistency of the descriptions, the alignment of bodies, the parallel strikes, the apparent magnetism drawing bushmasters into proximity cannot be dismissed outright. If the silver surge is real, then the bushmaster is not merely a hidden killer of the forest floor, but an integral gear in a predatory machine that spans multiple species. As the camera pulls back from the close-up of glistening scales, we see not a solitary snake waiting in silence, but a procession of bodies threading through moonlight, their movement quiet yet deliberate. The forest floor, usually chaotic with random scurrying life, feels strangely ordered, as though governed by a signal beyond human comprehension. Whether that signal arises from lunar frequencies hijacking their vibration-sensitive senses, or from some older biological protocol etched into their DNA, remains unknown. What is clear is that under the full moon, the Bushmaster abandons its solitary creed. It becomes part of something larger, an assassin in a synchronized hunt, a neuro-killer aligned with the pulse of the jungle itself. The Amazon River, even at night, never truly sleeps. Beneath its opaque surface lies a world in constant motion, schools of fish weaving through flooded branches, caimans sliding silently through shallows, and freshwater dolphins breaking the surface with exhalations that sound almost human. Yet when the full moon rides high over the canopy, its reflection trembling in silver ribbons across the water, the river undergoes a transformation. The air is cooler, the margins of the forest more alive with nocturnal calls, and the surface, so deceptively calm, conceals one of the jungle's most feared collectives, the piranhas. To most, the name piranha conjures images of chaos, of red waters foaming with teeth, of animals stripped to bone in minutes. The reality is more nuanced. Piranhas are not perpetual engines of destruction. They are social fish whose feeding behavior is usually dictated by opportunity, not frenzy. They inhabit slow-moving channels, oxbow lakes and floodplain waters, often swimming in schools for protection as much as for hunting. Most of the time they scavenge, taking advantage of carcasses, fallen fruit, or the occasional injured animal. Their reputation, while grounded in their capabilities, is exaggerated by folklore. Yet under the right conditions, their feeding strategy does tip into violence, driven not by malice, but by biology. In ordinary nights, a frenzy begins with a trigger, blood diffusing through the water, a sudden splash that signals distress, or the erratic thrashing of prey. The response is chemical and social. Each piranha, sensing blood with its acute olfactory system, reacts individually, but the presence of conspecifics amplifies the behavior. A single bite releases more blood, stimulating the school further. It is a positive feedback loop, each reaction magnifying the next, until the collective erupts into a storm of snapping jaws and flashing bodies. This is not mindless chaos, but an efficient evolutionary adaptation. By overwhelming prey quickly, they minimize risk and maximize food distribution among the group. But under the full moon, something shifts. Witnesses along the riverbanks tell of frenzies beginning in still water, with no apparent trigger. Fish leap from the surface in near synchrony, as if startled by an invisible force, and then the water erupts into turbulence. Thousands of jaws churn in rhythm, not localized around a single wound, but expanding outward, a red tide of violence that spreads upstream. The sight is not merely frightening, it defies conventional understanding of their ecology. What could cause a school of piranhas to ignite into frenzy without the cues that normally govern their behavior? One explanation lies in their sensory biology. Like many fish, piranhas possess a lateral line system, specialized canals running along their bodies, filled with mechanoreceptors that detect vibrations and pressure changes in the water. This allows them to sense movement long before it reaches their eyes. Under moonlight, when prey animals are more active along river margins, the density of vibrations increases. Multiple signals arriving simultaneously could overwhelm their threshold for restraint, tipping entire schools into premature aggression. What begins as hypersensitivity becomes collective ignition. Yet the reports of synchronized leaping and coordinated expansion suggest something more complex. Under the hypothesis of the silver surge, the piranhas may act not just as opportunistic feeders, but as amplifiers of predatory chaos. Once their frenzy begins, the noise and turbulence cascade through the river ecosystem, disturbing prey and predators alike. Capybaras fleeing a jaguar at the shoreline might stumble into churning waters. Birds roosting in overhanging branches flush at the commotion, some falling victim to arboreal hunters above. Even caiman, though armored, avoid the densest whirlpools of feeding, sensing that they too might be overwhelmed if they misstep. In this way, the frenzy does not remain confined to the water. It radiates outward, creating ripples of fear and reaction across multiple species. The physiology of piranhas makes this amplification possible. Their dentition is one of nature's most efficient tools, triangular, interlocking teeth designed not for chewing but for shearing. Each bite removes a chunk of flesh with guillotine-like efficiency. Coupled with powerful jaw muscles, this allows them to exploit sudden opportunities within seconds. In a normal ecosystem, such efficiency ensures the rapid recycling of organic matter. Carcasses do not linger, minimizing the spread of disease. But in the context of lunar synchronization, the same efficiency becomes destabilizing. Prey are not only killed but vaporized in terms of ecological visibility. The remains vanish so quickly that other scavengers, from vultures to insects, are denied their share. Another factor to consider is the moonlight itself. Many fish alter their vertical distribution in the water column depending on light intensity. Zooplankton, for example, perform daily migrations, rising at night to feed and sinking at dawn to avoid predators. Under a full moon, this cycle is disrupted. Increased illumination discourages upward movement, concentrating prey at intermediate depths. Piranhas, sensitive to these density shifts, may find themselves surrounded by unusually abundant prey. If their nervous systems are also wired to respond to lunar brightness, as some evidence suggests for reproductive cycles, the combination could trigger not only heightened activity but frenzied aggression. For local communities, these nights are remembered in stories that blend fear and reverence. Fishermen speak of avoiding certain tributaries during the full moon, not out of superstition, but experience. Nets lowered into calm water come back shredded, lines snap under sudden tension, and the surface, moments before mirror smooth, churns as if the river itself is boiling. Canoes, drifting silently, can find themselves encircled by water, alive with strikes, the metallic snapping of teeth audible above the din of the jungle. To sit in such a vessel surrounded by moonlit turbulence is to feel the river itself vibrate with a force that seems almost sentient. The ecological role of these frenzies, however, may not be wholly destructive. By forcing prey populations to alter their behavior, the piranhas contribute to a dynamic balance. Animals that would otherwise forage near water's edge retreat deeper into the forest, exposing themselves to terrestrial predators. Aquatic species adjust their spawning or feeding times, creating temporal niches for competitors. Even the frenzy itself provides nutrients to the ecosystem. Uneaten scraps drift downstream, feeding scavengers from turtles to catfish. What appears to human eyes as unchecked violence is, in evolutionary terms, a mechanism for distributing energy across the food web. Still, the idea that these frenzies could ignite without blood, without movement, and spread like wildfire raises questions about coordination on a larger scale. Could lunar cycles exert direct influence on the neural thresholds of piranhas, lowering their tolerance for stimulation? Could electromagnetic or gravitational fluctuations subtly synchronize their responses across kilometers of river? While these ideas remain speculative, the phenomenon of synchronized behavior in animals is not unprecedented. Fireflies flash in unison, crickets chirp in rhythms, and certain fish species spawn en masse during lunar phases. The piranha frenzy, under this light, may be less an aberration than an extreme expression of a universal biological truth. When environmental cues align, collective behavior can emerge spontaneously, transcending individual decision-making. As the camera tracks a canoe gliding across a calm channel, the silver reflection of the moon stretches like a blade across the water. For a moment, the surface is serene. Then, without warning, the river convulses. Fish erupt from below, scattering droplets that shimmer like molten silver in the air. The canoe rocks as turbulence spreads, concentric waves racing outward. Beneath the surface, thousands of bodies slice through the current in tight spirals, their jaws snapping in perfect rhythm, each strike adding momentum to the storm. The frenzy moves upstream, carrying its violence into waters unseen, leaving behind only silence and floating scraps. Here, the piranhas reveal their role in the silver surge. They are not initiators nor commanders, but amplifiers, conduits through which predatory energy is multiplied and transmitted. Once they ignite, the jungle's balance shifts. The chaos they unleash spreads beyond the river, reverberating into the canopy and the forest floor, binding water and land into one synchronized system of fear. In the choreography of the full moon, they are the accelerants, the flames that turn isolated sparks of predation into a wildfire of survival and death. From the forest floor, the canopy appears as a solid ceiling, an unbroken expanse of leaves and branches. But to the creatures who live within it, this space is a complex three-dimensional grid, one that spiders, more than almost any other predators, know how to exploit. The web is their signature adaptation, a structure as much architectural as biological, designed with remarkable efficiency. Each strand is an extension of the spider's senses, a line of communication between predator and prey. By converting air and motion into vibration, the spider transforms its environment into an enormous listening device. To walk into one of these webs is not just to be caught in silk, but to be caught in an organism's awareness, entangled in both the material and sensory fabric of its survival. On ordinary nights, spiders of the Amazon work quietly, stringing silken threads between branches, building snares that appear nearly invisible to the human eye. Some species spin solitary orbs, circular nets no larger than a hand. Others, like social spiders, create communal webs so vast they resemble shrouds cast over entire shrubs or trees. These structures serve not only as traps, but as amplifiers of predatory patience, allowing spiders to remain still, conserving energy until opportunity delivers prey. Their venom, though variable in potency, is a critical part of this strategy, subduing victims quickly before they can escape, while simultaneously beginning the process of digestion. The spider is a predator that invests more in planning and architecture than in direct pursuit, a hunter that wins not through speed but through design. Yet, under the full moon, researchers and locals alike report something extraordinary: a surge in web building, a phenomenon so sudden and expansive that entire sections of forest seem transformed overnight. By dawn, branches glisten with new silk, stretching across canopies in dense, overlapping layers. In drone footage captured above the treetops, these structures reflect moonlight like silver highways, forming lattices that seem to span the sky. Thousands of spiders sit motionless within them, not scattered randomly but positioned at intervals that suggest order, as if each individual were part of a larger network. This behavior raises profound questions. Why would spiders invest so much energy simultaneously? Building webs requires protein and effort. The silk itself is produced from specialized glands at great metabolic cost. For such activity to occur en masse suggests a trigger powerful enough to override the usual economy of survival. Under the silver surge hypothesis, this trigger could be lunar light, electromagnetic shifts, or even the cascading effect of other predators. As jaguars move prey into panic, as piranhas boil rivers into chaos, as snakes converge along hidden lines, the spiders appear to prepare the final layer of the hunting system, the net that prevents escape into the canopy. The ecological mechanics of this surge can be better understood by considering how webs interact with prey movement. Insects, birds, and even small mammals fleeing terrestrial threats often seek vertical refuge, climbing trunks, or taking flight into the branches. During normal conditions, the canopy offers a chance of survival, but when it is draped in fresh silk, that escape becomes a gauntlet of traps. Each strand is coated with adhesive droplets, engineered at the microscopic level to maximize capture. The more prey that collide with these lines, the more vibrations transmit across the lattice, alerting multiple spiders simultaneously. In communal webs, captured prey are subdued collectively, their struggles answered by waves of attackers rather than a single hunter. In this way, the surge in web building becomes more than an isolated phenomenon. It becomes a choke point in the larger predatory protocol. From a biological standpoint, spiders are exquisitely adapted to exploit such moments. Their sensory systems extend beyond the web to their own bodies. Specialized hairs called trichobothria cover their legs, sensitive enough to detect air currents produced by a flying insect's wings. Their slit sensilla, tiny receptors embedded in their exoskeletons, register strain and tension, allowing them to interpret even subtle vibrations in their silk. In effect, spiders transform their immediate world into an extension of their nervous system. When thousands of them act at once, the canopy itself becomes alive with perception, a sprawling neural network woven from silk and instinct. Under the full moon, this network is illuminated, made visible in a way that seems almost deliberate, as though the jungle were revealing its circuitry. But the significance of this event is not merely structural. It also reshapes the dynamics of fear within the ecosystem. Prey animals, driven upward to avoid ground predators, find their escape thwarted. Bats, which normally navigate easily with echolocation, encounter webs thicker and more numerous than usual, their sonar overwhelmed by a clutter of signals. Even birds can become ensnared, particularly fledglings or species that roost low in branches. The surge in webs does not just increase spider success, it changes the rules of survival for dozens of other species. What might have been a reliable escape path becomes a death trap, further amplifying the cascade of predation triggered by the full moon. Some researchers speculate that this synchronization could be tied to reproductive cycles. In many spider species, males and females time their activity around lunar phases, coordinating courtship and egg-laying with predictable rhythms of light and prey abundance. The full moon, by increasing insect flight activity, could provide a perfect opportunity to secure food for developing offspring. If thousands of spiders simultaneously exploit this ecological window, the result is not just a breeding advantage, but an ecosystem-wide web of death. This interpretation, though grounded in biology, aligns eerily with the silver surge theory, suggesting that natural rhythms can mimic design. From above, the imagery is striking. The drone camera tilts to capture the canopy at midnight, where the moon's silver disk paints every strand with reflected light. The webs shimmer like frost, catching the glow in geometric patterns that stretch across branches. Thousands of dark bodies sit suspended in the lattice, unmoving, waiting. Below, the chaos of the forest continues, jaguars pacing, snakes aligning, piranhas tearing through water. And above, the spiders remain perfectly still, their stillness not passive but predatory, the patience of an organism that understands the value of waiting in a world already in motion. What makes spiders especially potent in this system is their role as fail-safes. While jaguars and snakes depend on stealth, while piranhas depend on frenzy, spiders depend on inevitability. Once the webs are strung, something will collide with them. Their presence is not conditional on chance encounters, but guaranteed by sheer density. They are the net in both a literal and ecological sense, the final layer ensuring that no prey escapes the system once the surge begins. To appreciate their place in this phenomenon, one must recognize the efficiency of their design. Silk, stronger than steel by weight, retains its elasticity even under strain, capable of withstanding the frantic struggles of animals many times the spider's size. The venom, though delivered in minute doses, works rapidly to immobilize, its enzymes breaking down tissue into liquid nourishment. Each individual spider is a model of efficiency, but collectively they become something more, a filtering system across the forest canopy, one that turns vertical escape into futility. As dawn approaches, the webs remain. The silver sheen fades with the rising sun, but the architecture persists, heavy with captured prey or abandoned threads glistening with dew. Birds pick at them for protein, and insects recycle the silk. By midday, many webs will be abandoned, left to collapse in the wind and rain. Yet on the next full moon, the surge will happen again. It is not a permanent transformation, but a cyclical one, tied to rhythms older than memory, etched into the biology of creatures that predate mammals by hundreds of millions of years. In the choreography of the silver surge, spiders occupy a unique role. They do not chase, they do not leap, they do not roar. Instead, they wait, transforming patience into inevitability. Their webs, spun in unison across vast stretches of canopy, serve as the jungle's net, capturing not just prey but the essence of inevitability itself. In a system where predators converge into a living machine, the spiders are the final grid, the silent assurance that escape is not possible no matter where the prey runs. Night in the Amazon is never quiet, but under a full moon it feels unsettled, as if the forest itself has taken a long, restless breath. The larger predators have already played their parts. Jaguars have stalked riverbanks, bushmasters have moved in parallel lines, and piranhas have boiled the waters into frenzy. Above, the canopy has glittered with vast webs, strung like silver snares across the trees. By now, the forest floor is littered with the aftermath. Carcasses half consumed, scraps of flesh and feathers, bones scattered in mud. But where larger predators end their work, another force begins its march. It comes not with stealth or sudden violence, but as a relentless tide of legs and mandibles. It is the army ant colony, millions of individuals moving as one, the final erasers of the silver surge. Army ants are perhaps the most remarkable example of collective predation in terrestrial ecosystems. Unlike solitary hunters, their power lies not in the strength of the individual, but in the sheer coordination of the many. A single worker ant is fragile, capable of little on its own. But multiplied by hundreds of thousands, each acting according to simple rules and chemical cues, the colony transforms into a living river. These rivers flow across the jungle floor in dense, writhing streams, devouring nearly everything in their path: insects, frogs, snakes, birds, even the nestlings of unfortunate mammals caught unaware. What distinguishes them is not only their capacity for destruction, but their speed. Prey subdued by a column of army ants is dismantled in minutes, stripped down to bone or chitin with ruthless efficiency. This strategy, known as swarm predation, is possible because of the extraordinary communication system ants employ. Each worker deposits pheromone trails, chemical signals that guide the movement of others, allowing the colony to expand in multiple directions while maintaining cohesion. Scouts range ahead, discovering prey or carrion, then recruit reinforcements with chemical cues so strong that entire trails shift within minutes. To an outside observer, the river seems to think, to redirect itself like a purposeful organism. In reality, the intelligence lies in the emergent pattern born from millions of tiny interactions. The colony is the predator. The individual ants are merely cells within its body. Ordinarily, such raids are local. One colony moves through a patch of forest, consuming what it finds before retreating into a temporary nest, a bivouac made from their own interlocked bodies. Another colony, kilometers away, does the same, with no interaction between them. But under the full moon, something different occurs. Researchers and local witnesses alike describe the simultaneous movement of multiple colonies, spread over vast distances, yet converging as if summoned by the same signal. From one ridge to another, from separate tributaries, the black rivers emerge all at once. Their trails lengthen, their fronts expand, and they march not randomly, but toward overlapping territories. By the time they arrive at sites already disturbed by jaguars or piranhas, the battlefield is set for their final act. The imagery is stark. Moonlight filters down through the canopy, illuminating the forest floor in pale silver patches. In one of these clearings, a mass of ants pours forward, their bodies a writhing carpet that swallows feathers, entrails, and fragments left behind by larger hunters. Camera lenses zoom close to reveal the details: mandibles slicing into tissue, workers carrying fragments larger than themselves, lines of ants moving with military precision along trails etched in pheromone. In mere hours, what was once the chaos of death becomes sterile silence, the ground scrubbed clean as though the violence had never occurred. The ants leave no monument to the hunt, no evidence of the frenzy, only the faint smell of formic acid and soil newly disturbed. This role as ecological erasers is not just incidental, it is fundamental. By consuming remains that would otherwise linger, army ants accelerate nutrient cycling in the rainforest. The proteins and fats they dismantle are carried back to the colony, digested and redistributed into biomass, fueling the growth of larvae and sustaining the massive workforce. In doing so, they prevent the spread of disease that unattended carcasses might foster, while also denying resources to competitors such as vultures, flies, or beetles. It is a brutal form of recycling, but one that maintains balance in an ecosystem where decay must be efficient for life to continue. The synchrony observed during full moons raises questions about the cues guiding these colonies. Ants are highly responsive to environmental changes. Shifts in humidity, temperature, and atmospheric pressure can all trigger movement. Lunar cycles, with their gravitational and light-based influences, may add another layer of coordination. The bright illumination of full moons increases nocturnal prey activity, creating a cascade of opportunities that ants exploit. But the simultaneity, multiple colonies mobilizing at once, suggests something more profound. Could lunar electromagnetic shifts subtly influence pheromone communication? Could the vibrations of other predators, amplified by the frenzy of piranhas or the roars of jaguars, serve as triggers transmitted through the ground? Whatever the cause, the result is clear. The ants appear to move not as isolated colonies, but as synchronized waves of a single system. The consequences for prey are catastrophic. Fleeing animals that survived a jaguar's ambush or a spider's snare may stumble into ant columns, their exhaustion sealing their fate. Nestlings hidden in ground burrows, overlooked by larger predators, are dragged into the swarm. Even venomous species, like scorpions or smaller snakes, stand little chance against the relentless tide. The swarm overwhelms through numbers, its strategy less about precision and more about inevitability. Resistance is futile when thousands of mandibles attack simultaneously from every direction. Yet, for all their destructive power, army ants are not indiscriminate. Colonies regulate their movement, avoiding wasteful conflicts with other colonies and shifting territories to maximize resource use. Their raids are episodic, alternating between active hunting phases and stationary periods where energy is devoted to brood care. This rhythm ensures the long-term survival of the colony, a balance between aggression and recovery. Under the full moon, however, the rhythm falters, replaced by uncharacteristic expansion and convergence. It is as if the forest itself commands them to align, their collective body becoming the final mechanism in a larger machine. From an evolutionary perspective, the efficiency of army ants speaks to the power of cooperation. While jaguars embody solitary strength and bushmasters rely on ambush, army ants demonstrate the opposite extreme, survival through absolute unity. Their colonies are superorganisms, bound so tightly that the line between individual and collective dissolves. To watch them march under the moon is to witness an ancient truth of life, that strength can arise as much from cooperation as from competition. In the context of the Silver Surge, this truth takes on a darker meaning. Their unity is not just survival, it is erasure, the silencing of the night's violence by consuming every trace of it. As dawn approaches, the ants retreat. The bivouac forms once more, a pulsing ball of living bodies sheltering the queen and her brood. The battlefield behind them is immaculate, the soil bare except for fragments too small to see. Birds begin to call, monkeys stir in the canopy, and the forest seems to reset. To a casual observer, nothing unusual has happened. But to those who watched, the memory remains vivid, a tide of black life sweeping across the ground, rewriting the end of the hunt. In the choreography of the silver surge, the ants are the final wave. Where others strike, they erase. Where others spill chaos, they restore silence. They are the cleanup crew of the jungle's most ancient protocol, ensuring that by the time the sun rises, the forest carries no scars, only the hidden memory of what the moon has awakened. The Amazon is not a random sprawl of life. To the untrained eye, it may appear chaotic, predators hidden among shadows, prey darting in every direction, plants competing endlessly for sunlight. Yet, beneath this apparent disorder lies structure, a network of relationships so intricate that each species becomes a strand in a larger web. Nowhere is this more visible or more terrifying than on the nights of the full moon. When the silver light floods through the canopy, the forest reveals itself not as a collection of separate hunters, but as a system, a super-organism, whose parts move in synchrony with a precision that seems designed. This is the silver surge. The pattern always begins the same way, with the jaguar. Silent, deliberate, it moves along the riverbanks and through game trails, its restlessness amplified by the moon. Its roars, repeated at strange intervals, may serve more than territorial display. They appear to signal. Prey scatter in response, flushing into rivers, into trees, into the open. The jaguar does not need to chase every victim. It is enough to create disturbance, to set the stage for what comes next. In this sense, it acts less as a solitary hunter and more as a catalyst, triggering a chain of predatory responses across the ecosystem. The disturbance reverberates into the undergrowth, where bushmasters wait. Normally, these snakes rely on patience, striking at chance encounters. But under the full moon, they seem drawn out of hiding, moving in parallel lines as though aligned along hidden axes. Their sensory world, vibrations and thermal signatures, makes them acutely responsive to the chaos of fleeing prey. A rodent escaping a jaguar may dash straight into their coils. A bird flushed from its roost may land in their strike zone. In such moments, the bushmasters are not acting in isolation. Their timing, their orientation, even their strikes appear to be coordinated, as though they were the sharpened fangs of a single larger organism. Those that escape the land often find no safety in water. Here the piranhas ignite. What is striking about their frenzies during these nights is not the presence of blood, but the absence of it. They do not wait for wounds. They erupt spontaneously, as if responding to the same lunar signal. Schools that are normally cautious become volatile, their collective thresholds for aggression lowered. The splash of a fleeing animal, or even the vibrations from a jaguar's movements at the shoreline, may be enough to set them off. When they boil the waters, they amplify the disturbance tenfold, turning localized panic into ecosystem-wide chaos. Their role in the surge is not simply to feed, but to magnify, to ensure that terror and energy ripple outward, touching every corner of the system. Those that attempt vertical escape fare little better. During full moons, the canopy itself transforms. Webs spun in extraordinary numbers, spread across branches in overlapping sheets, glistening in silver light. Spiders that normally hunt alone seem to act in unison, their stillness deceptive. To climb, to leap, to take wing is to risk entanglement in this sudden architecture of traps. For an insect, a bat, even a small bird, the canopy becomes a labyrinth of invisible snares, and every struggle transmits through the silk to waiting predators. Here, the surge takes on its most architectural form. The forest is not simply a place of concealment. It becomes a constructed net, as though the jungle itself has decided to catch what the chaos drives upward. And when all else is finished, when jaguars have stalked, snakes have struck, fish have frenzied, and webs have ensnared, the ants arrive. Their rivers pour across the forest floor, converging from distant colonies as if summoned by the violence. They consume what remains, stripping flesh from bone, devouring feathers, carrying fragments back to the bivouac. In hours, the ground is sterilized. Nothing lingers to bear witness to the night's slaughter. The ants are not hunters in the same sense as jaguars or snakes, but they complete the system. They are the erasers, ensuring that by dawn, the forest looks untouched, as though the surge were never real. When viewed together, the system is startling in its efficiency. Each predator occupies a niche, but under the full moon, their roles overlap into sequence. The jaguar is the initiator, creating disturbance. The bushmasters are the precision strikers, waiting in ambush for the chaos to deliver prey. The piranhas amplify, spreading violence like fire across the rivers. The spiders net the canopy, closing escape routes. And the army ants erase, consuming the remains and restoring silence. The system functions not as separate accidents of predation, but as a cascade, each stage feeding the next until the forest has been swept clean. The question is whether this cascade is natural coincidence or something more deliberate. Ecologists recognize that ecosystems often display emergent properties, behaviors that arise from interactions rather than design. A locust swarm, for example, is not planned, but emerges when density, hormones and food supply cross certain thresholds. Coral reefs synchronize their spawning with lunar cycles, not through communication, but through shared response to environmental cues. Could the silver surge be such an emergent phenomenon, an ancient convergence of rhythms amplified by moonlight? Or is it evidence of something deeper, something written into the very biology of these predators, a protocol waiting to be activated? The possibility unsettles. If lunar cycles can synchronize not just one species, but many across different ecological niches, mammal, reptile, fish, arachnid, insect, then the moon's influence may extend far beyond what science currently recognizes. It would suggest a shared sensitivity, a kind of hidden circuitry in life tuned to celestial rhythms. More provocatively, some speculate that such coordination could be engineered, a biological program left behind by forces older than human memory, still running in the Amazon's depths. It would not require conscious planning in the present, only the persistence of ancient instructions, encoded in genes and triggered by light and gravity. The camera pulls back, rising above the canopy as the first hints of dawn bleed into the horizon. The webs shimmer faintly, dew clinging to their strands. The rivers run calm again, the surface unbroken. The jaguar retreats into cover, the bushmasters coil motionless once more, the ants withdraw into their living bivouacs. To the casual eye, the forest appears unscarred, pristine. Yet those who watch the night know differently. Beneath this silence lies the memory of synchronized violence, a system that awakens only when the moon demands it. As the sun breaks over the horizon, birds call, insects resume their daily chorus, and life flows forward as if nothing has happened. But the question lingers, heavy as the morning mist. Is the silver surge merely the forest responding to cycles older than civilization, or is it the echo of a program designed long ago, still pulsing in the blood and instincts of the Amazon's predators? The truth may never be known. Only the moon, cold and silent above the canopy, knows what it has awakened.